I'm doing my presentation on Ebony Stewart. Ebony is a contemporary poet and playwright. Her work deals a lot with Black experience, emphasizing gender, sexuality, womanhood, and race. Ebony is a sexual health activist and former sex educator. She's also licensed as a sex therapist. She's one of the most decorated poets in Texas, and she's received the Woman of the World Poetry Slam Champion Award. Ebony's one-woman shows Hunger and Ocean have also received B. Iden Payne Awards and the David Mark Cohen New Play Award. She's published 2 anthologies of poetry, Love Letters to Bald Fists and Home Girlhood. I'm going to be talking about her poem Eve. Eve is a poem about the remarkable strength of women, but also about their softness, their vulnerability, and need for self-discovery and autonomy. This first section talks about the creation of women. In the beginning, God told Eve she did not need man to exist. It is he who keeps hissing to be born. It is he who only has a rib to give. It is your choice. Your body to stew blood and eat your own fruit with. You have all the ribs you need, God said. This will only be balloon acting as bone. Eve said, let it float. I'll teach him to protect my heart. Then after, man will have purpose. The biblical Eve was created from a rib taken from Adam, and it seems that the patriarchal concept of women needing man to survive can be traced back to the creation story. In this poem, Ebony says no. God told Eve she did not need man to survive. She does not need to adhere to misogynistic interpretations of women's purpose to be a woman, doesn't need to give birth or let men rule her existence. This will only be balloon acting as bone. I love the metaphor here. Balloon kyphoplasty is a treatment for spinal compression fractures, where a small balloon is inserted and used to lift bone fragments into their correct place. The character God in this poem says, you don't need man, Eve, but he can be embraced to support emotional and physical help and love each other, but don't let anyone take away your autonomy. Eve said, let it float. I'll teach him to protect my heart. Let those bone fragments float back to where they should be, and let me teach him the values of emotion and empathy. This next section explores bodily autonomy and consent. He asked if he could touch her. This is back when man knew women as human, more than an afterthought. Remembered when women was more than a safe place to rest. Man remembered to ask, can I touch your holy? Eve said yes, drowned him in all her grace, wrote him an ocean's worth. He asked if he could put it in her mouth. She said, I am still speaking. He said, swallow me. She said, I am still tasting myself. He said, teach me to give birth. She said, you cannot handle the wars wombs bring. I am made of geography. I know this land. Hips and thighs, how sweet it is. The character Eve, the mother of humanity, stresses the importance of consent here and speaks about women having control of their own bodies. Man remembered to ask, can I touch your holy? It is only after Eve says yes that he is allowed to have access to her body. She says, I am still speaking. I am still tasting myself. She is human, more than an afterthought, more than a plaything for when he's bored. She is in control of her autonomy. No one can take that from her. I also want to note the use of the spelling of women here. WOMXN is a variation that is much more inclusive, as it allows representation of non-cisgender women and speaks to the need for the category of woman as a whole to be expanded. Ebony's use of metaphor at the end of this section is very compelling to me. I am made of geography. I know this land. Eve is made of geography. To me, this seems like a comparison to colonization, referencing the similarities between land being taken away from indigenous peoples and the way men tend to treat women's bodies, as if they own and have free range and unlimited access to them. Eve says no. This is her land. She knows it. No one is in charge of it but herself, and no one has explored it like she has. No one knows how to make her feel like she can. She does not need man to give her purpose or make her feel fulfilled in her sexual or romantic aspects. Now, this section here is about birth and motherhood. For several months, Eve is a forest fire, makes her body a place no one can afford. Feels like she let someone borrow her and now they never want to give her back. There's a quiet riot inside me, Eve said. Anyone who says women are delicate and breakable can't remember the ways in which they were born. So this is not just about childbirth, but about women creating and nurturing themselves. Once again, the variant WOMYN, like WOMXN, is an inclusive term. I think it really shows that the defining characteristics of womanhood are not the existence of a uterus, childbirth, delicateness, and fragility. They have more to do with self-expression, resilience, and the creation of oneself. Those first mentioned obviously are not bad things, but limiting womanhood and femininity to a strictly cisgender experience is exclusive and damaging. And once again, we see some powerful metaphors here. Eve is a forest fire. The imagery of fire, to me, describes self-discovery and the figurative burning of patriarchal values to allow women to be who they want to be, do what they want with their bodies, and recognize their own strength and autonomy. There is a quiet riot inside me, I think emphasizes this forest fire raging in Eve's mind and body. Here again, we continue to explore the concept of birth. She grits her teeth, stretching her bones and eyes wide. Man can only offer breathing. He is still afloat. The room smells like shit and burning sky. All she can do now is hope something else doesn't break again. God will reach in and pull back baby wearing her first. Man, forgetting women, will say, "That's mine. Look at what the Lord has made." Then after, women will be mispronounced. He said, "It's a boy." She said, "Let the baby decide." He said, "God damn women." She said, "Impossible, ungrateful man. It is my emotions that saved you. Without me, it is unlikely you'd survive." Ebony uses literal birth here again to capture the concept of women creating space for themselves in a male-dominated world. Man can only offer breathing. He is still afloat. Bringing back the metaphor of balloon acting as bone from the first stanza. Her emotional labor keeps him afloat. Her work is appropriated and praise is misdirected. Man, forgetting women, will say, "That's mine." Just as men claim ownership over the children nurtured in women's wombs and brought with labor into the world, just as men in government constantly work to suppress women's rights to control their own bodies and have the final say in whether or not they want or are able to go through with pregnancy and child-rearing, so also does man here take Eve's emotional labor and self-work and give the credit to himself. She said, "Impossible, ungrateful man. How dare he take the work she has done and claim it as his own?" The idea here of letting the baby decide, I think, also speaks to the idea of women's self-expression and control over their own identities, bodies, and choices. Eve is essentially saying, "Let me decide how I present to the world. Let me decide whether or not I want to be a mother. Let me decide who has access to my body, who is allowed to be saved by my emotions and the ability to experience the emotional work I have done in myself." Okay, the last section here sums up all of the ideas discussed in this poem. You are what your mother is. Therefore, God is a woman, the beginning of everything. Look at what the Lord has made. All of the ideas of self-expression in the first 4 stanzas ultimately culminate in the line, Therefore God is a woman, the beginning of everything. All humanity begins in birth, and all of human existence is filled with countless births, so to speak, of ideas, expressions, values. Throughout this poem, Eve has been striving to convey the fact that she, as a woman, is creative, powerful, independent, and nurturing. She nurtures herself and those around her, bringing into being numerous creations. Look at what the Lord has made. Well, God is a woman. I am a woman. I created that. I created myself and who I am, and no one can take that away from me, Eve says. Just as an aside, all of the artwork that I've used in this presentation is by an artist named Harmonia Rosale. She is an Afro-Cuban artist who takes Renaissance paintings and like old classic paintings and reimagines them with people of color, especially as with black women as her subjects. Also, I'm going to include a video of Ebony Stewart reading this poem. She does an incredible job performing, and it's just kind of a delight to listen to her. So I encourage you to check that out if you want to.